You ever have one of those moments where everything feels like it's finally falling into place only for someone to remind you they don't think you belong there? Yeah, that happened to me 35,000 feet above ground in Seat 2, a first-class Horizon Flight 512. Everything was perfect for exactly 3 minutes. The cabin had that soft pre-flight glow, leather seats warm from the afternoon sun, quiet hum of polite conversation. I was reviewing my Oxford interview notes, yes, that Oxford win out of nowhere. This flight attendant, Rebecca Grant, squared up to me and said it like a warning shot. You don't belong in first class. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even subtle. Just loud enough to stop every fork, every newspaper rustle, every scroll of every tablet. And I froze. Not because I was scared, though, but because I didn't expect it to come that bluntly. I had the ticket. I had the blazer. I had to resume. But to her, none of that mattered. The cabin went still, and before I could even form a response, she doubled down louder this time, with her finger pointed like I'd stolen something. I said, "You don't belong here." And just like that, my pulse started sprinting. Not from shame, from rage. So I reached down, pressed the record button on the little device in my bag, and let it capture everything. Every fake apology. Every condescending smile. Even the part where she knocked over my water and pretended it was an accident tried onto my Oxford notes. I didn't cry. I just dabbed those soaked papers with the cheap napkins she tossed at me like I was nothing. Around me, people looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. Not until a silver-haired woman in row 1C made eye contact. Margaret Thompson. Turns out, she was the former lieutenant governor of Georgia. She mouthed, "I've got your back." And I believed her. Rebecca kept talking, kept performing for the aisle. "We'll offer you alternative refreshments once we're airborne," she said with a voice so sugary it stung. I thanked her, quietly. Then I sat back and let the injustice burn a hole through me while the engines started their climb. You ever feel like everyone's watching, but no one's really seeing you? That's how it felt as we took off. Passengers whispered, looked away. Some pitied me. Others just tried to pretend it wasn't happening. But I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. That red blinking light on my recorder was my proof. My witness. Once in the air, it got worse. She skipped me for the meal. Told me they ran out of first-class dinners but had something from economy if I wanted. I said fine. She returned with a sandwich still half frozen and a look that said you should be grateful. I didn't bite. Then the announcement came over the intercom, hers again. Reminder. First-class seats are for ticketed first-class passengers only. Loud and clear. The kind of passive-aggressive you don't mistake for anything else. I didn't flinch. But the tension? You could taste it. Passengers started noticing. A young woman discreetly pulled out her phone. The elderly man next to me clenched his jaw. That businessman who wouldn't look up before? He gave me a nod this time. Small signs, but signs nonetheless. And then Margaret stood up. Let me back up a sec. This woman had been watching everything. Quiet but sharp. She stood, cleared her throat, and sighed so the whole cabin could hear. I'm sure first class comes with many perks, but public humiliation isn't one of them. Silence. You could hear the ice cubes melting in the cups. She turned to me, called me by name, and dropped the bomb. Kiera Davis, daughter of Senator Evelyn Davis. Heads whipped around. Rebecca Frosmidpool. Margaret introduced herself, not just as a retired official, but as someone who flew this flight specifically to meet me. Said she'd follow my work in Atlanta's food deserts. Call me a rising star. And just like that, the tide turned. Other passengers backed her up some, even admitted they'd seen everything. Rebecca's smug mask cracked. Thomas, the lead flight attendant, tried to brush it off. Margaret wasn't having it. Apologize, she said. Publicly. And she meant it. Next thing I knew, the intercom buzzed. This is your lead flight attendant speaking. On behalf of Horizon Airlines, I apologize to MS. Kiera Davis. You know, when a room exhales? That's what it felt like. Applause started slow, then real. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just sat there and felt the weight lift. But then came the twist. An hour later, after I'd finally gotten a drink, they tried to move me. Said it was operational. They wanted me out of first class. Stick me next to the lavatory. Still in first technically, but we all know what that was. I said no. They said too bad. So I messaged my mom. And that's when everything blew up. 2 rings later, Senator Evelyn Davis was on the line. Within minutes, the overhead screens flickered and there she was, live from D.C., behind a podium with the DOJ seal. My mom, calm as steel, said, "You're about to hear discriminatory behavior from a Horizon flight." Captured in real time. The cabin freaked. Rebecca turned ghost white. The recording played. Every word. Captioned. "You don't belong here. We're out of first-class meals. Move to economy." Proof, playing above every headrest. My mother announced an investigation. Then the kicker, effective immediately, all Horizon Airlines flights are grounded pending civil rights compliance. Passengers gasped. Phones flashed. Whispers turned to disbelief. Then to anger. On the ground, airports lit up with headlines. Horizon grounded. In the boardroom? Panic. Executives scrambling, sweating. The COO surrendered their internal files. Try to spin it. But the damage was done. Horizon bled money. Bled credibility. And me? I sat in 3C, back straight, recorder silent now, but not because I'd given up. Because the world was already listening. When we landed in London, reporters swarmed. Rebecca and Thomas were escorted off the plane. Suspended. Fired. A spokesperson gave a formal apology. And me? I walked into Oxford blazer pressed, notes in hand and nail my interview. The professor asked, "Why Oxford?" I said, "Because I want to study the structures that told me I didn't belong, so I can make sure no one else ever hears those words at 30,000 feet. So yeah, one voice, one recording, one moment of saying, no more. It's enough to ground an airline. But more importantly, it's enough to lift others up. So tell me, what would you have done if it had been you in seat 2A? Would you have hit record or stayed silent? Let's talk about it. Justice, dignity, belonging. What does it take to stand up when the seatbelt light's still on? Drop your thoughts below because someone out there needs to hear them.